Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are on the chapter, The Eternal and the Individual, page 383, beginning with the sentence, "But we see, Father, that in the end, this Purusha."
So, to get the sense of continuity, I'll read out the summary in very short of what he has said in the previous para. The eternal and the individual. The individual soul is a small portion of the universal soul. We have to keep. So, essentially, the individual soul is essentially divine. But when it comes down into manifestation, it has covered up itself with three thick layers: the material layer, the vital layer, and the mental layer of thought, of mind. So it has forgotten what it is, and it has to now rediscover what it really was originally. And that's an adventure. That's a spiritual adventure. It's a slow progress. It obviously is not a very fast one, because then the adventure will be over very quickly. It has to last for a long time. So, right from the material atom, where the divine presence is there, slowly it has to evolve. The consciousness is evolving. Not like in the scientific evolution, that the outer form is evolving, that's different. But it is the individual soul that is evolving. And to have experiences at different stages, it has to occupy physical bodies which are also more and more developing. How much can a divine soul, which has forgotten itself, develop itself in an ant? It can't. So the moment there is a slightly higher form of life than the ant, it will occupy that. And like that, slowly, spiritual evolution is the evolution of the soul, not of the body-mind life.
Is it a kind of leap?
It's a
or is it
gradual.
Yeah,
it's a gradual development. It's not much of a leap. If it has to go through 100,000 lives to reach a human level, it can't be a leap.
It can't be a leap, yes. Good point.
So, we'll read out what he said in the earlier one. We have to realize that our individualization of the body, life and the mind is a superficial formation of nature for temporary experience of life in a body. This entity is constantly changing, growing through many lives. Okay? So, this is the first thing. The body-mind life is something, even in this life it is growing, and in other lives also it is occupying more and more developed biological forms until it comes to the human level. There are three things to be noted. Number one, a permanent Purusha or person, conscious, self-existent, immutable, which is our real self. There is the individual soul. Okay? This is the first thing that we have to note. The second is a universe, which is a field of play and opportunity of growth for the soul. The drama of the individual soul is being enacted on the stage of the cosmos. You can put it that way. Okay? Then there is an external outer nature of body, life and mind created for experience in the world. So you have the individual soul, and he has to come down into the universal, and in the universe he has to take on a very limited body, life and mind. And the body, life and mind is temporary, however long it may last, 100 years, 120 years, but less or more, and it has to gather experience here in the physical world. Growth is possible only in the physical world, not in the other worlds, because they are static, immutable.
In other universes?
Pardon?
In other universes?
In other universes, we don't know. Srimdo says in one place, that's very possible. But the earth is a significant center. He uses the word significant center.
Okay.
But if you think a little liberally, it is impossible that only our earth has developed life to this extent. It's almost impossible to think of that.
There's a lot going on now about extraterrestrials living amongst us.
Yes, that's right. So definitely they must be there. So we'll have to wait and see. And there are a lot of phenomena that have taken place in the physical world where we can't explain things, like the crop formations in England and other places, and then the evidence of the extraterrestrial flying saucers, they call them, landing on the earth also and leaving the marks. All sorts of things are there. So it's very doubtful whether there is no life anywhere else in the world. Sri is the word significant center.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So, an external outer nature of body, life and mind created for experience in the world. If the Purusha were to annul itself, the outer nature of body, life and mind would disappear also. In other words, the body, mind, life cannot exist without the soul. If the soul is not there, there can be no body, mind, life. Then, if the universe were to dissolve and disappear, the body, life and mind would disappear too, because nature is part of the world. My body is from matter, and if the universe is not there, matter is not there, how will I get the body? Same thing with the prana, the life and the mind. It would disappear because nature is part. The first is the original creator of the other two. The last is dependent for its existence on the other two. The last is the physical body, life, mind. It depends on the universe and depends on the soul. The soul doesn't depend on these. It creates these. So there is a relation between the eternal and the individual. Now we read the para we have to read today. But we see farther that in the end, this Purusha, this cause and self of our individuality, comes to embrace the whole world and all other beings in a sort of conscious extension of itself, and to perceive itself as one with the world being. In its conscious extension of itself, it exceeds the primary experience and abolishes the barriers of its active self-limitation and individualization. By its perception of its own infinite universality, it goes beyond all consciousness of separative individuality or limited soul being. By that very fact, the individual ceases to be a self-limiting ego. In other words, our false consciousness of existing only by self-limitation, by rigid distinction of ourselves from the rest of being and becoming, is transcended. Our identification of ourselves with our personal and temporal individualization in a particular mind and body is abolished. But all is truth of individuality and somebody is asking a question. But is all truth of individuality and individualization abolished? Does the Purusha cease to exist, or does he become the world Purusha and live intimately in innumerable minds and bodies? We do not find it to be so. He still individualizes, and it is still he who exists and embraces this wider consciousness while he individualizes. But the mind no longer thinks of a limited temporary individualization as all ourselves, but only as a wave of becoming thrown up from the sea of its being, or else as a form or center of universality. The soul still makes the world becoming the material for individual experience, But instead of regarding it as something outside and larger than itself on which it has to draw, by which it is affected, with which it has to make accommodations, it is aware of it subjectively as within itself. It embraces both its world material and its individualized experience of spatial and temporal activities in a free and enlarged consciousness. In this new consciousness, the spiritual individual perceives its true self to be one in being with the transcendence and seated and dwelling within it, and no longer takes its constructed individuality as anything more than a formation for world experience. What he's saying is clear because we have read it several times, but we'll go through and see what he's saying. Okay, so remember that there is the true individual, which is the individual soul, essentially divine, but it has come down to the physical world and covered itself up and forgotten it by design, on purpose. Why? Because it's undergoing an adventure. I will lose myself and I'll get myself back again. This is the adventure that he is doing through not one person but 7 billion. He wants to keep on repeating this. Every time it's a little different. And the experience, he's enjoying the experience. So this is the thing. Now, this Purusha that he is talking about, okay, this Purusha is the individual Purusha, the Jivatman. But this Jivatman can identify itself with the cosmos. That's a cosmic consciousness. And the cosmic consciousness can have two aspects. I see the whole universe within myself, and I see myself in everything in the universe. Both are there. There are sonnets of Sri Aurobindo where he explains this. Okay? So, but we'll go through sentence by sentence. But we see farther that in the end, this Purusha, this cause and self of our individuality, so the cause and self of our body, mind, life, okay, that's what he's saying, comes to embrace the whole world and all other beings in a sort of conscious extension of itself and to perceive itself as one with the world being. So, if Sri Aurobindo says in the sonnet, the entire universe is burning, the Arcturus and Belphegor burn within my breast, he says. So, that's the cosmic consciousness. As I said, there are two cosmic consciousnesses. One, the world is in you, and you are in everything in the world. Sri Aurobindo calls this the apprehending consciousness and the comprehending consciousness. There are two types of things. So, you have become the universe. You are a small thing and now you have become the universe. You are a grain of sand, grain of salt. And now you have become the ocean. Okay? The saltiness, the individuality is still there, but everywhere. Okay? So this is what he's saying. Comes to embrace the whole world and all other beings in a sort of conscious extension of itself. The other day we were giving examples of the cosmic consciousness. I can feel what you are feeling, you remember? And that cosmic consciousness can have 3 levels. First of all, I'll feel your grief and your pleasure, both. I'll be affected by it. I give you 2 examples. One was a yogi who feels the whiplashes on the animal on his own back. We also discussed the stigmata. You are identifying yourself with something and it happens. Then there is the other case of mother's own experience in the playground. She is in a cosmic consciousness and she is feeling other people's, she is getting she speaks about fever also in the agenda. She thinks it's her fever. Later on she realizes that no, because she is in a cosmic, other people's fever is being reflected in her. So this is a cosmic consciousness. So in the first level, other people's happiness and sorrow you are feeling. Okay. In the second one, you can understand there, you can feel it, but you are not affected. And the third one, you even have the power to even resolve their sorrow. You even solve their problems. So this is the cosmic consciousness that he is speaking about. So this Purusha, which is the individual soul, has now become the universal soul. Okay?
At what level does it have the power to change?
Oh, it happens even in spiritual planes of consciousness. Right from the beginning you can have it.
Even the power to change things?
Pardon?
Even the power to change?
No.
No.
Power to change
that
is
has
not
to
there.
Come.
That comes only at level 3.
Okay, supramental.
Even at level 2 in the higher planes, some amount of power is there. You can purify your mind, you can purify your vital, but not your body. The body's transformation will be only from when you are stationed permanently in the supermind. And the supramental race comes. They will have a body which will be under the control of the consciousness. Right now our body is controlling our consciousness. But at that time in the supramental race, the consciousness will control the body.
And these varying stages of the suram, these varying stages of the manifestation of the new body?
No.
No.
Not the new body. Probably not.
Uh-huh.
The new body will be only, but Shivaram will have a divinized mind. He will probably have even a divinized vital, but not the body.
Okay.
The body will still be produced in the old biological method.
Right.
But the supramental body will not be produced by the biological method. It will be created by the consciousness itself. Just like the divine is creating the physical world. Swayambhu. He is creating himself. So that power will be there only at the supramental level. Okay, so cosmic consciousness can be there even at the higher mind level. Conscious extension of itself, and to perceive itself as one with the world being. This experience of the cosmic consciousness is symbolized in the Indian story of Sri Krishna. He is a child, he is a small child, and he is going here and there and eating mud also. And his mother comes and says, "What are you doing? Let me see." She opens his mouth and she sees the whole universe in his mouth. So this is a symbolic story of the cosmic consciousness. In its conscious extension of itself, it exceeds the primary experience and abolishes the barriers of its active self-limitation and individualization. The barriers are your body, your life and your mind. And that's a primary experience. We think of ourselves first as body, mind, life. So when you go to the cosmic consciousness, which he is calling conscious extension of itself, he exceeds the body, mind, life. In other words, the soul comes out of the body, mind, life. It is not a prisoner of body, mind, life anymore. You can actually see your own body lying outside. Now, this can happen even to many people who exteriorize themselves. It can happen. But that's not the cosmic consciousness. Exteriorizing yourself means your whole being is coming out of your body and you see your body lying on the bed, but your vital and mind is also there with you. It has come out. But in the cosmic consciousness, the soul has become the universe. And you are fully aware, even in samadhi also. But in sleep, our being goes out. But when we come back, we don't remember. So Mother says that, in fact, there are books, Sadhana of the Night. I'm not giving the exact title, but how to make your sleep conscious and how to remember what you were experiencing in other worlds. That's a whole, you can develop that capacity. So, this is what he's saying. In its conscious extension of itself, he is using different words to say the cosmic consciousness. It exceeds, it is the individual self. It exceeds the primary experience and abolishes like barriers of its active self-limitation and individualization. Note the words active self-limitation. You have done it purposely when you limited yourself in the body-mind life. By its perception of its own infinite universality, it goes beyond all consciousness of separative individuality. Now, you don't feel yourself to be separate from others. That's what he's saying. I'll feel myself to be a part of you. I'll see myself in everybody. That separation has gone. Okay? Is beyond all consciousness of separative individuality or limited soul being. You don't feel yourself to be separate from others. Something very interesting. He's saying, limited soul being. You have realized your soul, but you are still different from others. Nirvana experience. Okay? You are still different from others. By that very fact, the individual ceases to be the self-limiting ego. So, when you escape from your body-mind life, the ego is gone. Because by definition, the ego is that which makes you feel separate from others. Now, when you don't feel yourself separate from others, naturally you don't have the ego. Okay. We have to understand very clearly, the word ego is used in different contexts in different ways. For instance, I think in Freud, he used the word ego in a totally different way. But in Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga, ego is that consciousness which makes you feel separate from everybody else. You see the many and you think that that's a real.
Which was necessary at one time.
Yes. And it continues to be necessary until you have developed yourself fully. This is explained in Synthesis of Yoga in the chapter, the standards of conduct. First of all, you have to have an ego. Secondly, you must have the social standard, then the moral standard, and then finally the spiritual standard. But that's another subject altogether, so we won't go into that. So, ego disappears in the cosmic consciousness. By that very fact, the individual ceases to be the self-limiting ego. In other words, our false consciousness of existing only by self-limitation, by rigid distinction of ourselves from the rest of being and becoming. From the rest of being and becoming. Even in soul, we are individual soul. Okay? You can have a relation with other souls. Even in your soul consciousness, you can feel yourself to be separate from other souls. So that's what he's saying. But also in becoming. So being refers to the soul, becoming refers to your body-mind life. Okay, so it's transcended. In the cosmic consciousness, this is transcended. Our identification of ourselves with our personal and temporal individualization in a particular mind and body is abolished. The identification with mind and life and body is gone. You see it only as, oh, that was the shell in which I was living. That's what you will feel when you come out.
I would think many sadhaks in the ashram have had that experience.
Oh yes, at least the beginnings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you have the Brahmic consciousness, yes, certainly you have experienced that.
Yeah.
And Narad had a very interesting experience. And that also was, it's very interesting. You can experience this out-of-body experience in two ways. Okay. One was Narada is writing to Sri Aurobindo and saying, I felt as though my head is not there, something like that, he says. I am without a head or something like that. So Sri Aurobindo says, that is the beginning of your non-identification with the body. You are beginning to lose your identification with the body. And another experience is, you feel somebody else is walking beside you, but nobody is there. So your soul is separated, and so you are the body, mind, life, and the soul. They are going together.
Oh.
Now this is very interesting. I'll tell you something that you may not believe. Okay? But it's something, this separation of body, mind, life and soul, very interesting. Mona's father was Sudhir Sarkar, and he used to give homeopathic medicines, okay, to people. Now, Udar's sister was Mili. You remember her?
Oh, yes.
She was a very developed person. Okay. But she had gone to, one day, she had gone to Sudhir Sarkar for medicines. But that day he was not in a good mood or whatever, or he was annoyed with her for some reason or other, and he was very rough with her and told her to go away. Okay. But what happened is, she is going to him and he is scolding her, so part of her has come out and she is seeing her own body coming out. She is seeing her own body coming back to the door. This is a separation of the part of your consciousness with the body consciousness.
I had a dream with Mother, and she said, in a few days your head is going to fall off. Don't be concerned.
Did it happen?
I felt it happened. But there was one word that kept coming, Muladhara, Muladhara. I don't know what it meant.
Mooladhara is the...
I know. But
That kept...
the connection, I don't know.
It's very interesting. P.G. Woodhouse is a humorist.
Yes.
Okay? And he has written, he is very funny. So he says, in one place he writes, this man entered the building and came out so fast that he met himself going in. And this is what happened to Millie.
Yes, yes.
She is going, and then because of the scolding, she is coming back, but she is seeing herself coming back. When I first heard of this, I was a little doubtful myself. But she had told this experience to one of my colleagues in the press. We come back to our text. I give all these examples to make it very obvious that this separation, this identification with all, that becomes very understandable. Rigid distinction of ourselves from the rest of being and becoming is transcended. Our identification of ourselves with our personal and temporal individualization, in a particular mind and body, is abolished. But is all truth of individuality and individualization abolished? Does the Purusha cease to exist, or does he become the world Purusha and live intimately in innumerable minds and bodies? And Sri Aurobindo says, we do not find it to be so. In other words,
you need to explain that a bit to us.
So what he means is that when you go to the cosmic consciousness, your ego is gone, and normally you think of yourself as the ego. And so the individualization of body, mind, life is gone. But the true individuality is still there, but that is not the limited body, mind, life individual, nor is it the ego. Now it is a universalized individual. Universalized individual. When you are in the cosmic consciousness, you are experiencing the cosmic consciousness. Who is experiencing the cosmic consciousness? Somebody is. That somebody is the real individual.
So the Purusha does not cease to exist.
No, it does exist. It does not cease to exist.
It does not cease to exist, yes.
But we must remember one thing. It's possible also for the soul, as in the Buddhistic tradition, to disappear into the infinite and dissolve even your individual, universalized individual soul also you can disappear. You don't want to have anything to do with manifestation. That also is possible. But normally it is not like that. That's very rare. So the individualized soul remains. Again we come back to our idea of the wave and the sea. The wave is the individual, but is part of the sea. Now the wave realizes that it's part of the sea. The particular form of the wave has gone. The body, mind, life has gone, but it has become the sea itself. Okay, so that's what he's saying. We do not find it to be so. Okay, so I have a little note there.
Interesting, after the word abolish, there's the question mark, and then the line continues, does the Purusha?
Yeah, that's because this is his style. We were discussing one day his style of writing.
Right.
So this is another style that he adopts which nobody else does. They will put D with a cap. But he is not doing that. Why? Because it's a related question.
Okay.
It's a related question, so he doesn't put a capitalization. It's not a mistake. It's not intention.
No, it's not a mistake. No.
It's not a printing mistake, I mean.
Yes.
Not the printing.
Not a
It's not a printing error. He does that. Okay. Does the Purusha cease to exist, or does he become the world Purusha and live intimately in innumerable minds and bodies? Sri Ramdas says, no, it's not like that. You maintain your individuality, but you are cosmic. He still individualizes, and is still he who exists and embraces this wider consciousness while he individualizes. But the mind no longer thinks of a limited temporary individualization as all ourselves, but only as a wave of becoming thrown up from the sea of its being, or else as a form or center of universality. So you are universal, but you are only one center of the universality. Okay, so the soul still makes the world becoming the material for its individual experience. But instead of regarding it as something outside and larger than itself on which it has to draw, by which it is affected, with which it has to make accommodations, it is aware of it subjectively as within itself. The universe is within itself. Okay, so it embraces both its world material and its individualized experience of spatial and temporal activities in a free and enlarged consciousness. In this new consciousness, the spiritual individual, not the body, mind, life, the spiritual individual perceives its true self to be one in being with the transcendence, and seated and dwelling within it, and no longer takes its constructed individuality as anything more than a formation for world experience. We'll look at this carefully and identify what he's saying. In this new consciousness, the cosmic consciousness, the spiritual individual, not the limited individual, perceives its true self to be one in being with the transcendence. You have become God. The transcendent is the God, the divine. Okay. You feel yourself to be divine. That's what he's saying. You can identify yourself with the divine. This is admitted in our Indian culture, but it is not admitted in Christianity. You can't become God. Not possible. You can have a relation with Him, but you can't become God. There's a whole book, Amal's correspondence with B.D. Griffiths. Okay, he was a Christian, but he embraced Advaita philosophy, and he came here and he combined both, and he had an ashram in South India somewhere, and he had a lot of correspondence with Amal. And in that book, it is very clearly stated that he doesn't believe that you can become the divine. That's why you wouldn't believe also in an avatar. You won't believe. You can have a relation with the divine, but you can't become the divine. But here he's saying you can become the transcendent. And transcendence is nothing but that, the highest. And seated and dwelling within it, and no longer takes its constructed individuality. Which is the constructed individuality? Your body, mind, life. Because the universe has constructed your body, and also it is destroying the body. Same with the prana and same with the mind. It is constructed for you. You occupy its house, and when you have experienced enough, you destroy the house and go back and take another house. Okay? So this is what he's saying. Constructed individuality as anything more than a formation for world experience. If you have to come into the world, you have to naturally have a body, because the body is part of the universe. So it is there, you are allotted a house, come into this house, have experience, and after that you can go back, the house can be destroyed. So he is speaking here mainly of the cosmic consciousness. Our unity with the world being is the consciousness of a self which at one and the same time cosmicizes in the world and individualizes through the individual Purusha. And both in that world being and in this individual being and in all individual beings, it is aware of the same self manifesting and experiencing its various manifestations. So, that then is a self which must be one in its being. Otherwise, we could not have this experience of unity. And yet, must be capable in its very unity of cosmic differentiation and multiple individuality. The unity is its being, yes, but the cosmic differentiation and the multiple individuality are the power of its being, which it is constantly displaying and which it is its delight and the nature of its consciousness to display. If then we arrive at unity with that, if we even become entirely and in every way that being, why should the power of its being be excised? And why at all should we desire or labor to excise it? We should then only diminish the scope of our unity with it by an exclusive concentration, accepting the divine being, but not accepting our part in the power and consciousness and infinite delight of the divine. It would, in fact, be the individual seeking peace and rest of union in a motionless identity, but rejecting delight and various joy of union in the nature and act and power of the divine existence. That is possible, but there is no necessity to uphold it as the ultimate aim of our being or as our ultimate perfection. So, he is talking about the ascetic who rejects the body-mind life, the Mayavadin who says, or Buddhists also, they say we don't want to have anything to do with the universe. It is so limited and so gross. Why should we have anything to do with it? So Swamdeva is saying, you can do that if you want, but it's not necessary. You can come back with your individualized, universalized consciousness into the body-mind life again. That's what he's saying. He is differing from the Mayavadin and the Buddhistic philosophy. I'll do one thing. I will read the summary and then we'll go through each one. So, summary actually condenses the whole thought, because some of those sentences sometimes you feel he's jumping and giving other ideas. So, what he's saying in this paragraph, the consciousness of the self is capable of universalizing itself, yet simultaneously maintaining the individuality as a personal Purusha. So you feel yourself to be the universe, and yet you are the wave also. That's what he's saying. As we explained, you are experiencing yourself to be the universe. Who is experiencing? Somebody is experiencing. That's a wave. There is a consciousness where the wave doesn't exist. That's a Buddhistic solution. You become the cosmos, no more individuality. Not even the individual soul.
The wave doesn't exist for the Buddhists.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That is possible. But Swamdeva is not interested in that.
Yeah.
Maintain your individuality, become the cosmic, become God, and maintain your individuality to come down again into the physical world and do God's work here. So the individual as well as the infinite, the eternal and the individual, both are equally important and necessary, he says. But the others, the Mayavadins and the Buddhists, are rejecting the individual and saying we want only the eternal. No? So this is what he's saying. So simultaneously. And this self-experience and this self experiences itself as being both infinite and relatively finite. Relatively finite. This self, which is the one, the same everywhere, is capable of cosmic oneness, yet differentiated individuality also, which is yet infinite. This unity is the being, the Sat aspect, whereas the multiple individuality is its aspect of power and delight. So, the unity is the Sat aspect, the substance, and the multiple individuality is its power of, its aspect of power and delight. Very interesting what he's saying. If then man becomes one self with all, there is no necessity to annul the individuality. Although this is possible and does happen, like the Buddhists, as I said, and the Mayavadin. But why should it be held as the ultimate aim of life and the last perfection? He is referring to the Indian tradition. The Indian tradition says, no individuality, no more birth in the world. Get away from it. So he is challenging that. He says it's not necessary. That's not the only spiritual solution. Okay, so there is no inevitability for that to happen. So you don't need to follow the Mayavadic solution or the Buddhistic solution. You can maintain your individuality still and be universalized.
But with all that Sri Aurobindo says about the earth, in Savitri, for example,
Okay.
It has to become divine also
That's in the future.
in the future.
It has not yet happened and nobody has been able to do that. Yes, but you must understand one thing about this divinization of matter. It's not that all matter will be divinized.
No, of course not.
When man has come, the animal has still maintained itself. When the animal came, the matter was still there. So when supermind comes also, man also will be there. It's like the divine is showing that you think matter is only this. No, I am giving you a sample where it can be something else. It can be animal, it can be man, it can be superman. It's a sort of pyramidal structure. So these will remain, but everybody will be benefited by that rise in the next level of consciousness.
Yeah, in Savitri he says the higher kind will help uplift the lower.
Yeah. The yogi will be helped by the superman. The ordinary man will be helped by the yogi. Animals will be helped by man. So there will be a help coming down and evolution will be faster. That's what he says. So, or the one possible reason would be that in the power, the act of consciousness, there is not real union, and that only in the status of consciousness is there perfect undifferentiated unity. Now, in what we may call the waking union of the individual with the divine, as opposed to a falling asleep or a concentration of the individual consciousness in an absorbed identity, there is certainly and must be a differentiation of experience. For in this active unity, the individual Purusha enlarges its active experience also, as well as its static consciousness, into a way of union with the self of his being and of the world being, and yet individualization remains and therefore differentiation. The Purusha is aware of all other individuals as selves of himself. He may, by a dynamic union, become aware of their mental and practical action as occurring in his universal consciousness, just as he is aware of his own mental and practical action. He may help to determine their action by subjective union with them, but still there is a practical difference. The action of the divine in himself is that with which he is particularly and directly concerned. The action of the divine in his other selves is that with which he is universally concerned, not directly, but through and by his union with them and with the divine. The individual, therefore, exists though he exceeds the little separative ego. The universal exists and is embraced by him, but it does not absorb and abolish all individual differentiation, even though by his universalizing himself, the limitation which we call the ego is overcome. In this paragraph he is saying, maybe that Buddhists and the Mayavadins have some reason, because if I am universal and individual at the same time, can it not be said that I am not fully universalized? Why is the individual there? So maybe they are right in some way. That's what he's saying. In this para, that's what he's discussing. But there are many shades.
Many.
So we'll do that next time.
Week. Thank you, Ranga. Namaste all.